Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Eccentric Mind Podcast with George Hernandez. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I want to talk about a big topic, and it's motivation. There's this interesting quote that I actually have on my wall that gave me the idea just now to talk about it in this sort of way. And it's by Aristotle. I'm pretty sure some of you have heard this quote. It's very impactful. And you know what? I'm going to break it down a little bit. Maybe towards the end, you can really truly see the bigger picture that I'm trying to paint for you guys. So here it is. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Aristotle. And then there's another one. Sow a thought, reap an action. Sow an action, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap a character. Sow a character, reap a destiny. Yeah. Motivation is likely one of the biggest topics that is on my phone right now. If I scroll on my social media, I'm going to see things about God, things about growth, things about motivation. It's literally the hot topic at the moment. And I don't think that's ever really going to dampen or get cut off anytime soon. But I really want to challenge you with the idea that I can't motivate you, and you don't need the feeling of motivation in order to persist in your everyday goals and trying to reach the light at the end of the tunnel. You don't need the feeling of motivation, okay? There's this cool idea that I heard by Chris Williamson. He was on the Jocko podcast, and he talks. So Jocko has said it in the past that courage is being afraid to do a particular thing, but even though you feel fear and you do it anyway, that is an act of courage, feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And then Chris Williamson brought up that idea of courage, but then he talked about motivation, and it's whenever you don't feel motivated, but you do the thing anyway. You do the writing, you do the reading, you go to the gym, you wake up early. That in and of itself is being motivated, even though you don't have the feelings of motivation by your dopamine, right? And that's what I want you guys to understand is that don't expect to drag motivation your way. Because what I've come to realize myself is that motivation is, if I were to give you a bottle of cold water and your mouth is burning, your tongue is on fire. Yeah, you could drink the water and it's going to get rid of the sensation of the burning feeling on your tongue, but it's eventually going to come back. And it's eventually going to come back once you drink more water. That's what motivation is. You see, we can gain a lot from people, but what we gain from them when we scroll on the Instagram reel, when we watch the motivational video on YouTube, it's not doing anything for us but annihilating the time that we have at this current moment. Because something can stick out, something can stick on a nerve and make you gain some goosebumps in watching it, but the only thing it's actually doing is, like I said, giving you a sip of water when your tongue is on fire. Taking a sip of water, it's going to get rid of the pain for 15 seconds, maybe less, but it's eventually going to come back. So then what do we do? What do we do when it comes to not feeling motivated or not feeling the motivational feelings in order to persist in a particular endeavor? And it's getting rid of the idea that motivation is something you need, and getting rid of the idea that motivation is a feeling. Yes, we do feel motivation and inspiration when our dopamine is skyrocketing and we feel great about ourselves and we want to take action and we want to take risks and make sacrifices at this current moment. But the moment it presents itself, we don't do it. See, motivation is simply a feeling, and like every other feeling, depression, anger, sadness, it's all fleeting. It all comes back. It all eventually goes away. It comes in and it comes out. It's all this just constant up and down sort of thing. So instead of relying solely on the motivation in order to do things, Start doing things regardless of how you feel. This is the toughest part about it all, right? Like, I can't motivate you. I physically, and I don't even want to motivate you in a way that is, I'd much rather do things myself, and in the process of me doing the things that I said I would do, motivate you, rather than giving you something to be motivated by, because I know it's just a Band-Aid fix. So I'm going to give you an example real quick, and there's one with Nelson, right? Like Nelson, he wanted to obtain. He wanted to have this body very, very, very badly, right? He was 110 pounds, and he looked himself in the mirror, and he saw the striations. He saw how lean he was going to be. He saw the thickness of his back. He saw, how big are his legs going to be? How big are his biceps going to be? He literally envisioned the entire process. But in that moment, perhaps Nelson was a bit motivated to take action in this particular endeavor because he saw the vision, right? But I'm very sure when he was drinking his tunas with his protein concoction and with tuna in it 2 times a day, he felt even more motivated by the actions that he took. See, in the moment that you want to do something, you may feel extremely motivated to do it. However, you need to trust your vision and take action on the vision itself. You can't just lollygag and wait for the thing to come to you. Because the only way to actually allow your vision to come to fruition is by taking action on your own vision yourself, because nobody else can possibly create your vision. So going back to Nelson's, 110 pounds, gains 100 pounds. Each and every single day, he saw just a little bit of progression in the mirror. A little bit of more mass in his muscles, a little bit more, weight on the scale. That reinforces the belief in yourself that you are what you say you are. And you're starting to gain the evidence of the things that you told yourself you would do. There's another idea by Chris Williamson. I'm just CW pilled at this moment. He has a cool idea that if somebody were to invite you, or let's say you go out to dinner with your friend, and very often they show up late, they don't show up at all, and they don't tell you that they're going to be late, or they don't tell you that they're going to skip out, right? They don't send you any messages. And after a few times, well, you know what? I'm not going to hang out with that guy anymore. Well, I'm not going to invite them to this and that anymore. Why? Because they hold back on their word. They're not impeccable with their word. They're not showing up, They're not somebody you can necessarily trust. So then why is it that we create these visions? Why is it that we tell ourselves the things that we're going to be doing and how we're going to do them? And the very moment it's time to find out whether or not you're true to yourself or not, you neglect it. You don't do it. You don't persist. And what do you think that does to yourself? What do you think not living up to the expectations that you told yourself you would do, not living up to the actions and doing the things that you said you would do? Our bodies have reactions to words. Anytime we have a negative person talk about certain things, we react to it physically. We react to the things that we hear, to the environment we're subjected to. What do you think your mind and your body thinks when you snooze, when you eat the junk food, when you know you're not supposed to? What do you think happens? It sends a signal to yourself that you're not believing in yourself, believing in the vision, and neglecting the internal thoughts of what you can be. And that is how we tend to drop ourselves down. And this is something I've had to relearn recently. Intellectually, I understand what it takes in order to become that driven, motivated person. Also, I don't think we really want motivation. I think we just want to be driven, right? I think we just want to move in a specific direction. We don't want to be motivated. We want to be driven. I think that's the hot take. But, this is something that's been on my radar recently because I'm struggling with it again. But it's intellectually and through experience, I've done this. I've given myself the habits, and I've given myself the time when I didn't want to do it, but I did it anyway, and I felt good at the end of it. But now it's like a relearning curve because, the nature of who we are as humans, we grow and we expand, and the habits that we had in the past, they die, and new habits come in. I heard this other thing that knowledge passes away. It's true. The knowledge that you thought you had in the past is eventually going to go away. And like I said, we as individuals and as humans, we expand and we grow, or we regress, or we stagnate. And the things that we did in the past may be completely different to the person we are becoming now. We're literally caterpillars, if you really think about it. We shed, and then we have a period of time of isolation, and then we grow. And intellectually, I understand how to get myself in the process of becoming motivated and becoming driven and self-disciplined. But it's interesting now, the position I'm in, because I break my headlights so often in the path of trying to make this thing happen or trying to make this thing work, but it doesn't work in the way that I want it to. And I blame the idea that I am not that driven individual as I used to be, and I compare myself to who I was and who I am now. And what I'm realizing again is that you don't need motivation, because motivation is a byproduct of taking action and giving yourself evidence that you are who you say you are. It's not necessarily something that you need to pull over to yourself and then you can do the thing. No, it's something so much simpler. It's just doing the fucking thing that you said you would do and living up to the promises that you set upon yourself, so that way your body can react in a positive way rather than a negative way of not living up to the promises that you had set in mind. It's tough, man. It's not an easy thing to do, because I think it's also a narrative in our head that we created ourselves, that perhaps we're not deserving of the things that other people have. We're not deserving of the body, or we're not deserving of the confidence, or whatever it may be. We create these internal dialogues and this internal chatter, and we believe them. So much to the point that we sabotage ourselves in pursuit of achieving something we desperately and genuinely want. And the whole process of this entire thing of becoming motivated or becoming driven is actually just breaking those beliefs that you had set in mind. And it's probably going to be one of, if not the hardest things you've ever had to do, because you're relinquishing the ideas that have gotten you to where you're at now. And now you're challenging those beliefs because internally, right here in your heart, you think better. You know that you can be better. You know there's a version of you that just wants to be let out, so that way you can make a dent in the world. So that way you can make a difference in your community or your society or in your church or in your work or in your gym. There's a version of you that wants to be pulled out. And the only way I've only known how to get that version of myself out, it's right there. Just like Nelson. Sow a thought. Nelson got the idea and he fixated it in his mind on who he was going to be, when he was going to get there, and what he was going to do in order to get there. This, in and of itself, sowing a thought, it propelled him because he desperately wanted to achieve it. It was something that had an emotional connection to him because there was an event that wasn't allowing him to be a protector. And so that gave him the emotional spark. But not only that, just wanting better for himself. So a thought. You have an emotional connection and you have a thought of who you can be. Next, reap an action. There's an action out there that leads you closer to where you want to go. But in the process of getting there, it builds up the character, it builds up the experience, and it builds up the skills. So that way, by the time you're at that point, you have already grown so much to be able to now hold the thing in the palm of your hand, to be able to make the thing, to be able to try the thing, or to be able to record the thing. Sow a thought, reap an action. What is one action that you can partake in every single day? And this is something that you need to be solidified in. You cannot hold back on yourself. You cannot hold back on the things that you want to do, right? Even if it's just one thing, do that one thing and do not fucking miss. Next. So we're at sow a thought, reap an action. Sow an action, reap a habit. Once you reap an action, and once you sow an action, doing it every day over a long course of time, 60, 90 days, maybe 6 to 12 months, who knows? This in and of itself is going to lead the idea of habits now being inserted into your everyday routine. Remember, the thing that we want to do, we need to give it everything that we have. Whether it's 45 minutes or it's just showing up every single day. Over a course of time, they say it's anywhere between 18 to 21 days, but it could honestly be way more in order to build a habit, because once it's now habitualized, you have no friction in doing it every single day, regardless of how you feel. And this is the point where so many people want to get to. 99% of the people just sow a thought, and the moment they try to reap an action, they cannot persist in the action for that much longer. It's not as hard as you really think it is. It's just having a sense of delusion in who you can be compared to the 21 years or the 22 years of domesticated belief in who you are as a person. But it's choosing that other version, the version of yourself that you want to yank out of yourself. You're choosing that person in the long haul. So it's all beginning with the thought, then taking an action. But taking the action part is the hardest part, because you've never done these things before. You've never tried these things out before, because what you know now is what you know now. You've never tried these things, and it's different, and it hurts, and it's uncomfortable, and it's boring. But if you persist on it, if you just show up every day when you don't feel like it, that's being motivated. But once it flips from an action to a habit, that is where significant change comes in, because now you do it regardless. It is easier to do it than it is to not do it. Then you sow a habit, you reap a character. There's this great quote by Jim Rohn, and he says, "Make goals that make something of you in pursuit of achieving them." Once you sow a habit, and you will reap a character. This is where that version starts getting yanked out slowly but surely. You start hitting the gym and you had this idea of being leaner and having broad shoulders and having the nice thick back, and you actually start seeing it physically in the mirror. And in the process of you going out and trying to make this version of yourself come out, the way you present yourself to the world, who you are as an individual, you reap a character that is in alignment with the person that you thought you were going to be. And that's a beautiful thing, man. It's a very, very beautiful thing. However, we have not talked about the feeling of motivation, right? Like, none of this necessitates to the feeling of motivation. However, I can tell you from pure experience that the times I felt most motivated, the times I actually had the feeling of inspiration and motivation, did not come when I was in pursuit, was not in wanting to achieve. Yeah, I felt motivated. I did cranked out some push-ups or whatever, or cranked out some sit-ups, right, when I felt that motivation. But the feeling of giving yourself evidence, getting the six-pack, having the broad shoulders, having the business that's making online income, giving yourself that evidence that you stick to your vision and you refuse to let go of the bone, and you decide to take action on those things and you start getting the rewards, that is by far one of the greatest feelings of motivation, because you have nothing but pure evidence that you are what you say you are, and you don't hold back on your promises. And in the process of that, in the process of holding true to your character, holding true to your words, and holding true to your promises, you become a character who moves in alignment from each and every single fiber of his body, from his foot to his toes, to his ankles, to his calves, to the chest, to the mind. Everything is in alignment with the person that you desperately want to become. Not only that, but being backed up by the motivation that you are doing the thing and nothing in front of you is going to stop you. I just want you to really understand that people can't motivate you. People are going to give you words of motivation. People are going to give you motivational quotes. But all that really is a sip of water when your tongue is burning. It's going to release, it's a Band-Aid problem. It's going to get rid of the problem, the sensation of burning on your tongue for 5 seconds, and it's going to come back. The only true way to motivate yourself is following through with the thoughts that you had set in mind, taking actions, turning them into habits, persisting in the habits, and seeing the version of yourself in the mirror who you originally thought, of when you first had the idea fixated in your mind. That's when the motivation floods in. That's when you become a driven person. The thing I've been learning too is that I was thinking, am I motivating people? Am I helping people? What am I doing, right? And then someone told me that I motivate them. And I really thought about that. Why? What am I doing? What am I doing that's motivating them? And then I realized it. People aren't motivated by the words that you say and how you make them feel sometimes. I don't know, I could be wrong. But I think people are more motivated by the actions that you take than the words that you say to them. I can go onto my IG and post a specific post and somehow motivate someone because I'm following through on the thing that I want to do. I am following through on the actions that I told myself I would do. I'm holding true to my vision and persisting in my vision to make it come to fruition. And I think that's what motivates somebody. Not only that, but me persisting in my vision, me deciding to take action, me deciding to move in the direction to hopefully make my dreams come true. We got this shit. But me doing that gives me a sense of fulfillment because I'm doing the thing. I refuse to let go of the bone. But in me refusing to let go of the bone, somebody else has now been given a token of motivation so that way they can use it and they can follow through on it, So it's don't rely on somebody else to give you motivation. the good motivation is when you give it to yourself. The one that sticks, the one that does not falter, is the motivation that you give to yourself. Yeah. Now, there's some couple things that I was like writing to. I really hope you guys kind of got something out of this. I think I was all over the place, but yeah, I really hope you guys got something out of this. I know it's kind of like bouncing all over the place. Like I was talking about this and talking about that, but I don't know. This one was fun. I prefer doing podcasts where I just write them down, but I don't read it off the computer because I just think that's not authentic and not real. Like I just want to give you what's on my mind right now. Like this is what's on my mind. Take it. And I don't know. I like that a little bit more. But the reason I bring this up is, I'll just be real, is like, I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with this again. Because intellectually, I know what to do. But here I go just breaking the headlights of my own momentum. And, you'll hear from the outside coming in like, oh, you're doing a good job. You're doing this. You're doing that. Yet, I don't feel like I'm doing enough or doing 100%, like I don't think I'm putting in enough effort into this. And I think, I don't know, getting back to that train is interesting because I want to get back onto that train. And I know the version of myself. Like I know there's a version in me that has the capacity of working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, Monday to Monday, right? And waking up super early, hitting the gym, blah, 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 blah. Right? Like I know he's down there somewhere, but it's like I need to rebuild him, because that version of myself is now gone. And that's not me. Like it's not a value judgment. I'm not saying he was better because he definitely wasn't, right? He was just completely unbalanced and there's a lot of things he wasn't taking care of that just got worse. But only I can make him come out. And the only way I can make him come out is if I just persist and stop letting myself break the headlights on the car on my path. Because each time I do that, I have to stop and ruin my momentum and ruin the distance in which I'm traveling in. Because I have to get out, replace the headlight, and start driving again. So, whatever you're doing, give yourself a phase of 6 months, 8 months, this is what I'm doing, of no. I will not go. I will not go to the party. I will not go out with my family. I am putting in everything that I want to do for the goals that I had set in mind. This may sound unbalanced. This may sound hustle culture, bro. But I wrote it today. Life is not fun delaying your goals in pursuit of external gratification. It's not. And when you have goals in mind and you're holding back on them, I think a version of yourself is like slowly deteriorating. And he's also calling out to you to get your ass up and start working on it. And I'm tired of hearing that. I'm tired of feeling it. I'm tired of breaking the headlights on my car. And if you're listening to this, just fuck. It's time to lock in. This has been the Eccentric Mind Podcast with George Hernandez. I really hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know how you feel about this one or any of the other podcast episodes. I'd just love to hear anything about the podcast overall. But I hope you guys have a fantastic night. Take care.